Okay, today we're going to cover two different things since I completely dropped the ball and forgot your tutorial video from last week. So today we're going to cover two separate quizzes. The first one is actually kind of a review of what we did the last time that we met. It's subtracting integers. Okay, that sounds nice and complicated, but it's really not hard. Let me walk you through just a few things. This video won't take very long because the last time we went through this, we took these notes, and so this is kind of going to be a review for you. What you're going to see here is we're going to have numbers. Some of them are going to be positive and some of them are going to be negative, and we're going to be adding and subtracting them today. And it makes a difference what in your answer if a number is positive and it's added to another positive number. It makes a difference if you have a negative added to another negative. And it makes a big difference if you have a positive number and you're adding or subtracting a negative number to it. But the first thing you need to do is realize what one of my teachers taught me, and that is this. When you're talking about addition and subtraction, anytime that you have a positive number and you're going to add it to another positive number, then your result is always going to be a positive answer. That's important to note. So we have one positive number added to another positive number. Your answer is always going to be positive, okay? If I have a negative number, or if I have a number and I'm going to subtract, you see these two symbols together, then your result is always going to be positive. Now that's the one that kind of throws people off, because negative minus a negative number, that just looks kind of funny. Well, I'll show you what to do with that here in just a minute. But for now, just know if you see those two symbols right next to each other like that, the answer is going to be a positive number. And likewise, if I have a positive number and I subtract a negative number from it, or I subtract a number from it, the answer is going to be, if the bigger number is a positive number, the answer is going to be positive. If the bigger number is a negative number, then the answer is going to be negative. And again, when I show you these examples, that's going to make sense. But for now, if you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause it. And we're talking about addition and subtraction here. So these are the symbols and what kind of answer you will get. If you haven't written that down, go ahead and pause the video and do that. I'm going to assume that you have, because I think we copied those down the last time we talked. So let's look at some of these. Right here I have 8 plus 6 equals 14. That one's pretty straightforward. Not that big a deal. You know 8 plus 6 equals 14. But what you don't necessarily always know, because it's not always written, is that this 8, even though it's not there, has a positive written next to it. Just like that. And so what I have here in actuality is a positive and a positive. So if I look at my little notes here, I can see that a positive plus a positive is going to be a positive. So even though it's not written, my answer is going to be positive 14. We don't always write that positive out there because it's understood that if there isn't a symbol in front of it, that it's a positive number. But I'm writing it just for the sake of showing you that, hey, it's there. It's a positive because I have a positive and a positive. Then I have this example right here in the middle. That is the one that throws most people off because they think this part right here looks kind of funky. A minus a negative, it doesn't make sense. My teacher taught me that anytime I see those two minus signs right next to each other like that, that I need to do this. Every time I see it, that was one of the first steps I would always do. Anytime I see two negatives like that, my teacher said, go ahead and make them both into plus signs. So that's what I did there, and that's what I encourage you to do. And when I make them plus signs like that, even though it might not make total sense to my brain just yet why I do that, just for the sake of knowing how to do it correctly, just trust me for now. And then as we do more of these, it'll become clearer why that makes sense. But for now, just take that step and just trust me. Anytime you see two negative symbols, go ahead and make them positive symbols. Then the problem becomes easy. It's another 8 plus a positive 6, or 8 plus 6. And that's going to give me 14, just like the one above it. Now this last one is only slightly different. We have a negative 8, and we're adding 6 to it. So I have, of these two numbers, my larger number is the 8. And my rule that we just wrote down says that, hey, whenever I have two different symboled integers being added or subtracted together, my answer is going to take the symbol of the larger number, which in this case is the 8. Since the 8 is negative, my answer is also going to be negative because that is the larger of the two. That's what I mean by that. So negative 8, I'm adding 6 to it. Doesn't quite get me back to even. I'm still lacking 2. So it's going to give me a negative 2 as an answer. That's the one also that throws people off because it's hard to think in negative numbers. But here, let's go through some of this. This is what we went over last time. I like to think of negative numbers in terms of money. It makes it easier for my brain to understand it. So I'm hoping it will for you. I look at this problem, and if I were to read it like it's supposed to be read, I would say negative 3 minus 5. What I have here is actually two separate numbers. Okay, I have a negative 3 and I have a negative 5. Now what I think about when I say put that in terms of money is, let's start with the negative 3. I owe you $3. That's because I have negative, so I owe you money. Anytime I see that negative symbol, I think I owe you something. Okay, you're not giving me something, it's money that I owe you. So I see negative 3, I think I owe you $3. Then what I did with that negative 3 is I subtracted 5 more from it. I have a negative 5. So I originally owed you $3, and now I owe you $5 more. So if I owed you 3, and now I owe you $5 more, now makes sense. I owe you $8 altogether. And that negative goes right along with my problem. It means I owe you $8. When I think of it in terms of money, it seems to make it a little bit easier. So negative 3 minus 5 more gives me 8 total that I owe you now. What about this? I have a negative 7 minus a negative 8. Remember, what did I tell you that my teacher told me to do the very first time I see any negative signs right next to each other like these two are? She told me, make them like this. So now I have a positive and a positive. It's going to make it easier to work with. Okay, so the first thing to do, change those symbols to positive to positive. Now I have a problem that makes a little more sense. So I rewrote it. Negative 7 plus a positive 8. I then go back to my money scenario. I have a negative 7 over here, and that tells me that I owe you $7. But I paid you $8. And if you'll see, I've got negatives and positives. And if we go back to the second slide where I said, what do you get when you're adding negatives and positives together? Well, it takes the symbol of the bigger number. And the bigger number, in this case, is 8. And 8 is positive. Because 8 is positive, I know my answer is going to be positive something. So then let's just do the math on it. I owed you $7. I paid you 8. So that means I'm going to owe you 1 or positive 1. I mean, actually, that means you're going to owe me 1. I'm sorry. I owed you 7. I paid you 8. I get some change back. You owe me $1. So it still followed our rules of addition and subtraction with regard to different symbols because it took the symbol of the larger number. That's really all there is to it on that. So let's go through the quiz, see if we can figure out some answers. Right here, I have 8 minus negative 11. Two minuses right next to each other is going to be changed. I'm going to make this a plus and this a plus. It's the first step when you see two negatives together. So once I have 8 plus 11, the answer is actually pretty clear, 19. When it was 8 minus negative 11, it gave me some confusion, but as soon as I changed those both to plus signs, 19. I have the same scenario here, 5 minus a negative 5. The first step I take when I see those two negative symbols next to each other is I make them both plus signs, then I have 5 plus 5, which I know you know is 10. Now I have a negative 2 minus 7. Here's a scenario where it's going to help me in my brain to think of it as money. So I have negative 2. That means I owe you $2. And now I have a negative 7. That means I'm going to owe you 7 more. I'm going to go down even further in the hole with you. You're going to start breaking my legs to get your money back. So I got negative 7 and 7 more. So now I owe you not just $2, I owe you 7 more than $2. I owe you $9. So minus 2, negative 2, subtract 7 more. Now I owe you more than I did the first time. I'm getting into debt. Not sure how this one differs, but it's the same basic concept. I owed you negative 2, which means I owed you $2. Subtract 5 from that means I owe you 5 more. So now I'm going to owe you 7. It's important that I get that negative in there. Here I have another scenario, very similar. First thing I do, change these to positives. So I have negative 9 plus 10. Means I owed you $9. I added 10. Now I have differing symbols, don't I? I have a negative 9 plus 10. And anytime I have different symbols, that means that the answer is going to take the symbol of the larger of the two. And the larger of the two is 10, and it's a positive. So I know my answer is going to be positive something. Just what is it? I owed you $9. I gave you 10. Guess what? You owe me $1 back. Now here is kind of a no-brainer. I've got negative 1, and I added to it nothing at all. Well, anytime I have something that I don't add anything to or subtract anything to, it's going to stay the same. Here I have a number. I'm not subtracting the entire number. I'm not even going to waste your brain cells explaining that one. But here I have negative 143. I've got my two minus signs. That's going to become a plus. So I have minus 143 plus 143. It's going to take the symbol of the larger of the two numbers, but in this case, they're both the same. So you'll see how that plays out. Let's look at it in terms of money. I owed you $143. My plus symbols say I paid you back $143. How much do I owe you now? Nothing. I broke even. At least I'm not in debt anymore. Change these to plus, negative 6 plus 8. I've got two different symbols. I've got a negative and a positive, negative, minus, and a plus. It's going to take the symbol of the larger number. The larger number in this case is 8, so I know my answer is going to be positive something. I had $6 that I owed you. I paid you 8, so that means you owe me some change, buddy. You owe me $2. Here I have, let's think in terms of money again. I have $6 that I owe you, and to that, I owe you $5 more than that. So I'm going to add those two numbers together, and I am now in debt to you $11. It's apparently going to take time to think about it, but it's right. So that is really all there is to that. I will go ahead and make up the next one for multiplying integers. Now, it's not a lot different.